What's up, dudes? Long time no see. It's your boy. Um, yeah, I just had a bunch of life stuff going on. Reinvigorated RuneScape addiction. Um, you know, just things. It's been a crazy month and a half, dude. I'm not gonna lie, super crazy. Today, we're gonna be talking about America's greatest, or I don't know if it was America, the world's greatest torture device and invention next to the nuclear bomb. This has destroyed more risks than the nuclear bomb. It is a terrible device. So, right now, you may be looking at this picture being like, yo, what is this? What is this? This looks like something out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They about to take somebody's skull cap open. No, this is the first mouse that was ever invented. Now, let's talk about mouses. Um, so before the mouse, we had the joystick. I'm a fan of the joystick. I think it's pretty cool. I grew up with arcade stuff. Love it. The joystick was kind of invented for military application. Think like flying planes, different things like that. And then this guy's like some guy, think like Engelbart is this guy's name or whatever. He's like, yo, I'm gonna make this thing. It's gonna be the mouse, right? Because it kind of looks like a mouse because you got the string that's like the tail, all that sort of thing. And it's gonna be, computer display control on an XY axis, blah blah blah. And this is gonna be great, right? Little did he know that he kind of screwed everybody over by doing that. So as a point of note, before this modern style mouse that we had, it was actually the trackball. I think trackballs are based. I got a trackball right here. This is the best trackball you can get. Oh, it's all dirty. Hold on. This is a Kensington Orbit. Big fan. They're like $30, dude. You can't beat it. Anyway, the trackball and then the mouse, right? And now everybody uses the mouse. Now this is something that you cannot escape. You cannot escape it. Even after I tell you all the information that I have for this video, you will still not be able to escape the mouse. Now, couple caveats. I am not the most aware of how keyboard users function on Windows. I know there's auto hotkey. There's a couple other things. I don't know. I think from my experience, trying to do custom hotkeys on Windows, if I remember correctly, was kind of a pain in the ass. So I never really got into it. This is gonna be more focused, like at least when I get into the software stuff and this and that on Mac OS and Linux. However, as a Windows user, you will be able to pick up stuff from this. Okay, so we got a little bit of history here. This guy was a huge douchebag, and he made this mouse thing. Look at this. This literally looks like something you should cut somebody's skull open with. It's kind of brutal, right? I'm not gonna lie though, these old school connectors like this, this is Kino. This is like, you don't see this anymore. But yeah, all right, let's get into my little thing, right? Hold on, let me get to the beginning. Oops, spoiled a little. All right, so you want to be mouseless. Rodent killer, right? Why go mouseless? Okay, there's gonna be like some main points here: speed, tactile sensation, and efficient navigation. These are all kind of tied together. When I go like this, I can switch through my windows really fast. I know that on 3 I got this, on 2, or wait, no, on 2 I got my browser, and on 1 I have my terminal, right? These are fast ways of doing it. Any sort of kind of getting from point A to point B on a keyboard driven setup it's just going to be far less effort and far faster than trying to be like I think I got a thing. Hold on. I got to be like, oh, we go here, and then I can go, let me open up this, right? Or I don't even have that installed. Hold on. Let me go like this. And I open this thing, and I click on this thing, and then I can click in here, and then I got these things. It's like really annoying when it's just be like CD like this, and now I'm inside my thing, right? And that's keyboard, right? So that's gonna be like the main focus of like what you want to achieve, the shortest path from point A to point B, right? because your hands and your wrists, if you're a person like me, I use my hands for a living. I'm always cutting stuff with a knife. I'm stretching and mixing dough and doing this. And I got the frying pan and all, right? So, like, as a grown adult who has a full-time job, I can't be like wrecking my wrist on top of wrecking my wrist at work, right? So these are two things that are kind of synergistic together: the tactile speed, functionality, and then, just how you're engaging with, your hardware, right? So you're not hurting yourself, right? Wow, people with your window switching. I just displayed a little bit of it. Most people that aren't using a computer like that. They're going to be very clunky, very fiddly. Oh, I gotta do these things. Or like, the like Mac OS users, when they got that thing where it just like, it's like a alt tab thing or whatever, but it just splays all the windows out. And it's like, holy cow, that is an anxiety attack waiting to happen, right? So, efficient window switching. Here I'm on Awesome WM. They got this cool thing called Cycle Focus, which is this thing, and it's just like an alt tab thing, and it's just fast. It reminds me a lot of like OpenBox, LabWC. They have the same kind of window switcher built into it. This is my preferred window switcher. It's literally like one tap. It's not like if you have like a window switcher with Rofi where you have to, pick one and then press enter and then it jumps to that. No, this is just like one tap. So I much prefer that situation. We'll get more into the software sort of stuff, but I figured as explaining this window switching thing. All right, we talked about save your wrist, right? Learn simple scripting to automate your tasks, right? Because there's certain things that you're going to be doing over and over and over and over again. So if you're a person that wants to get into keyboard driven stuff, like scripting is going to be a big thing. Master your tools, become a wizard, sweet. Utilize your mechanical keyboard clacks, as you've probably heard my mechanical keyboard clacks. This is, I think this is a tactile sensation thing, like the auditory, getting that feedback. It helps you with speed. It helps you go faster. It's like some weird psychological thing, dude. I'm telling you, like, I don't understand it. If you get a good sounding keyboard that you like, you're just gonna go faster and faster and faster. All right. Using cooler software with better features, right? We're talking about getting off the Windows, getting off the Mac, maybe going over the Linux, using window managers, using, keyboard-driven browsers, stuff like Qt Browser. These are cool things that have like way more advanced features in them usually, and you can do cool things. And another thing why you might want to go mouseless is if you are a laptop user. Using the trackpad on the laptop, we all know this is a torture device. This is something that literally HP, Lenovo, Dell, all these places, they invented trackpads to torture you. Let that sink in. All right. The truth about going mouseless, right? You become more fertile. I have the pregnant man emoji. Even if you're a man, you may become pregnant, right? Might happen. Buy a trackball. Kensington Orbit with the scroll wheel. Amazing, right? Speed increase 99% amongst all tasks. And like that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not by much, right? You're going to be going way more insanely faster. This is something repeated. Instant gratification web browsing. And what I mean by this is in Firefox, right? If you do Alt 1, 2, 3, it'll switch between these different, right? And you can even do the control tab thing. Just being able to navigate. Let's do like a thing. Let's go like let's go here. Right, so I have Tridactyl. We'll talk about that a little later. But just being able to be like, JC, jumping around your page, Shift G, GG, back up. This is all like some instant gratification sort of situation for your web browsing. It's very nice. Ergonomics, we already talked about that stuff. Minimalism, right? So minimalism kind of ties into this whole mouseless mentality because you don't need all this UI stuff, right? Because you're not clicking on anything and everything's going to be in the same place, right? So you don't need all these extra little bits and bobs. Like, sure, you can have them. You can build them into your setup, but it's not needed, right? Brain training, that's just like knowing the ins and outs of your machine and how to get from point A to point B. the fastest way possible, right? Brain training, just getting your whole brain, and that will start affecting your normal life, right? So part of the reason why I got into this whole like Linux ergonomics and computer ergonomics thing is like I'm a line cook, right? And there's this concept in traditional French cooking called mise en place. I'll probably say that wrong. I pronounce all the French shit wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it's. I'm bad with it. Anyway, mise en place. The concept is this: when you start your station at night to go cooking, right? Every dish or every prep thing or anything that you do that requires a timed situation, you're gonna have pre-prepped. So like, let's say I got a burgie station, right? I'm gonna have my burgers already pattied out. I'm gonna have my buns sitting there waiting good. I'm gonna have all my condiments and everything all in the right places. So like I don't even have to think about it or look. I can just go and then I'm just building a whole thing. Half the time when I'm at work cooking, I don't look at my hands. I don't look at what I'm doing. Everything is in the same place every single time, so I'm always grabbing it, right? So like that's huge. You want to take that concept, apply it to computers, right? I don't know. I was probably going somewhere a more funner place with that, but that's really what it is, right? So okay, let's move on to something like, listen, dude. There's some things you got to use a mouse for. I'm not gonna glaze you over and be like, oh yeah, oh you could just use a whole computer, just throw the mouse in the trash, right? Like this is an unrealistic viewpoint, right? So I have some stuff here. Video editing. Sure, you could be a wizard. You can sit with that 40,000 line FFmpeg documentation and you can learn how to script yourself some video editing, right? Like, this is a thing. There's some homies on YouTube that have full video tutorials on how to script FFmpeg. That's not the life I want to live, right? So I got to use a mouse for that. Photo editing. You can go pretty far in a lot of programs with the keyboard, but it's still going to boil down to some fine detail sort of stuff that you're just going to need the mouse, right? Playing video games, I can't be playing no RuneScape without a mouse, you know what I mean? Which is also kind of cool with the keyboard thing because I'm saving a lot of wrist torture from my RuneScape playing. Blah blah blah. Music production, I would say music production is one of those ones where it wouldn't be as much effort to move into a fully keyboard workflow. However, I just feel like you're just way better off using a mouse. And like specifically with music production, if you listen to all the old school producers and stuff, they're all using trackballs. They're all using the big Kensington trackball, the square one. It's like a different than the one I have. That's probably the one you want to go with. Honestly, like trackballs are great. If you don't need ultra fine detail sort of stuff, I would just jump on the trackball. The only thing you can't do with trackball is play like shooter games and like I would play RuneScape with the trackball though when I'm laying in bed. Like it works, right? Anyway, drag and drop. That's a subject. So every once in a while you need to drag and drop something. That's just how it is. You're not gonna avoid it. You're gonna have to drag and drop something. You can do the whole highlight, control V, control C, control V thing. It doesn't always work that great, right? And then if you tab too far past the main box inside your window manager and like different things, it's like it doesn't work out great. I've tried to master this. It is not good. Drag and drop is actually the reason why I started using a TUI file manager and then just kind of using core util stuff or, your MV, RM, CD, CP, like all these sort of core util stuff. That's why I started learning it because the drag and drop was just brutal. Okay, poorly designed software and websites. You're going to come across websites that do not allow you to use things like Vimium and Tridactyl to use key hints to click on stuff. Like, it sucks, dude. It sucks. That's how you know somebody's bad at their job in designing websites when you can't navigate it with just the keyboard, right? Those are the type of people they probably wrote the website in VS Code and, whatever, blah, blah. Okay, setting up your mouseless workflow, blah, blah, blah. Web UI stuff, that's another thing too. So there's a few things that I own that have weird web UI interfaces, and for whatever reason, again, Tridactyl, Vimium, these Coastal Q browser, these things don't interact with that very well. So yeah, there's gonna be that. Okay. Prerequisites and tools for finger surfing. Operating systems. All right, we'll talk about operating systems for a second. You can, like I said earlier on, there are ways to try to get it going with Windows. Auto hotkey, some other things. I'm kind of, for the sake of my own ideology, I'm going to say don't use Windows. Just don't use it. Mac OS is a good alternative to Windows. However, you need to invest in the hardware, number one. And number two, you ain't going to be gaming, bud. However, with Mac OS, you do get better interaction with stuff like music production DAWs, video editing, photo editing. If you're in that proprietary kind of world, this is a good space for you, right? It's just Windows ain't got it, bro. It just ain't got it. And that's unfortunate. Ultimately, I would say, though, Linux is the way to go. You want to use Linux. Linux is just going to have the most options, basically. And most things will allow you to use whatever keybinds you want, right? And the keybinds are like going to be your main focus of jumping into this, right? App launchers. This is a big thing. You've probably heard of these things before. They have them for Windows, they have them for Mac, obviously they have them for Linux. We're thinking about stuff like Alfred, ULauncher, Raycast, Rofi, dmenu, Tofi, Wofi. Let me see if I could think. Is there any other ones? Krunner. Yeah, these things just allow you to go like this, and you can type something in and then launch an app, right? That's like a kind of it's gonna be your starting point, right? And then we'll move on. Browser plugins. These are stuff that I kind of just mentioned. Tridactyl, Vimium. These are things that allow you, you get these key hints, and then like, oh, I want to go to the search. I can go to JC. Now I can, in the search, or maybe I'm not. Hold on. JV. JV puts me in the search, and then I could be like, oil lamp. Right? And then, boom, I could search the thing. Those are like, that's going to be like a number one thing that you're going to want to do. A satisfying keyboard. Oh, something to switch keys. This is more for people who are trying to force stuff on Mac OS and Windows. Think like QMK, think Raycast, think you're basically changing what one key is to another, just so you can save yourself on finger stretching. You know what I mean? That's like a main thing. Bash, that goes into the whole scripting and automation. You can use ZSH. What these are, this is a shell. It's inside your terminal. Most of the people watching this video that watch my videos, they know what a shell is. But for the people that don't know, when you open up a terminal, which is the command line, it starts a shell. And what the shell does is it gives you kind of like options and features that you can do inside of that. Like, for instance, auto completion, right? So you start typing, let's say I want a CD to documents. I could do CD and then DOC, right? Because I have downloads, but documents is DOC. And then I hit tab and it'll complete that. And then I can hit enter and it'll jump into that. So this is just like saving you a little bit of typing every time, right? So yeah, Bash is a shell. You can learn ZSH, you can learn Elvish, Fish, there's a bunch of them out there. I would say if you're a person that's just getting into it, obviously I always recommend Bash. Just start learning a little bit of Bash. You don't need to learn a lot of it, you just need to learn enough to kind of operate your thing. Because if you move over to keyboard usage, you are going to find that using TUI programs is going to be a lot smarter and better. Because most of them are set up with Vim motions, right? So there's just ways of navigating stuff. Yeah. Satisfying keyboard, we already kind of talked about that. Clickety clack. IPC-like commands. What this is, is it's kind of like, for instance, I'm using Awesome Window Manager, which has an API. And the API allows you to interact with the window manager via the command line, right? So I can type a command and the window manager does something. IPC, kind of the same idea. BSPC, Berry C. There's a lot of these different ones. Depending on which window manager you use, that window manager will have its own kind of thing it does. And that is, something that you're going to use a lot with scripting. Let's say you're a lazy person and you want the same shit to open up every single time you open up your computer or you turn on your computer. You can script that. You know what I mean? You can use these IPC commands to set everything in the right spots, right? So that's the thing. I kind of covered this too, multiplexing. Oh, edit text like a pro. All right, I'm going to say something. This might be a little controversial opinion, but modal text editors that function inside of the terminal, are far better than any graphic BS that you can get. Sorry, Genie users. Sorry, Emacs users. It's just, it is what it is. They just function better. They're funner to navigate. They're cooler looking. They're ultimately way more customizable, this and that. And yes, I know I'm just talking about editing text, but if you get into using these window managers and stuff like this, you're going to need something like that. Something like NeoVim, Helix, I don't know. There's a bunch of them. Nano. I don't know who uses Nano, but that's one. Yeah. So yeah, there's that. Okay, first steps. We're going to get into like how to train yourself to use this sort of stuff. Use an app launcher. I talked about that, but this should be your first step. I want to come over here. Let's say I want to open my file manager, I want to open up nitrogen, right? Oh, I got these things. You're going to want to learn that first. That's the first thing. Closing your windows, right? So on most things, by default, it's all F4. I don't know why. There's probably a historical reason why people are stretching their hand like that. You know what I mean? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Alt F4 used to do it. I use Alt Q because it's more a natural resting placement on my. I use my thumb and my ring finger because it's like my hands on the home row. I'm only moving over one key with this sort of thing, and then boom, I can close, right? So yeah, knowing how to close your windows, that's probably important. Use keybinds to open frequently used things. So like, I don't know, for instance, I have a keybind just to open up Yazi like this because I'm always in here looking at stuff, kind of exploring my file system. So that's one. Opening up your browser, opening up like any sort of app that you're using constantly, you're going to want to set to a keybind. Browser plugins, we touched on that. More advanced stuff, scripting, we talked about that. Sessionizing. There are programs that sessionize. I think Mac OS kind of sessionizes on its own. I know when I've used it for whatever reason it does. And what I mean by sessionize is like how I was saying about the scripting, how you can set it up so every time your machine starts, all these different things open in their own places where they're supposed to be. You can do that. That's great. Typing trainers. This is something you're going to get into. Wait, do I have one installed here? No, I don't. You can use things like Monkey Type. They have Thocker. They have a T-Trainer. There's a bunch of stuff you can get in the terminal. You can use web interface. They have UIs. There's a lot of options for this. I would suggest using those because it's just going to make you faster all around, and it's going to get you more accustomed to where the keys are on the keyboard, right? Because you want to be able to do this without looking. I know in my videos you see me look down at the keyboard. I don't normally type like that. It's only because I'm like trying to do 3 different things at once that I'm sitting there looking down at my hands. Normally, I'm just kind of looking and typing with my fingers, not even looking at the keyboard. And that's kind of like important, right? It's going to save you a lot of time and effort because looking down at the keyboard is basically just the same as clicking through menus on on the mouse, time-wise. Layering. Okay, this is some more advanced stuff, right? So when you get into like using like switching keys, like the only keys that I personally switch is I swap caps lock and escape. And that's mainly because when I'm inside Helix, which is my text editor, you press escape to get out of insert mode, right? And that's just like, I'm always trying to touch it with my middle finger, go to the top, and that's like kind of annoying when I can very easily just tap my pinky on caps lock and that'll escape. So, layering is kind of like, for instance, if I hold down Alt and then I have all these things set to Alt. So Alt P for me is screenshot. Alt Q is close a window. Alt R is open up my file manager. Um, that you can consider that a layer. And let's say on super, so if I do super left and right, it moves the workspace left and right. If I do super 1, it goes to workspace 1. So that's a different layer, right? So you can set up these layers and just have, kind of, I'm not going to say an infinite amount of keybinds, but you can set a lot of keybinds just by thinking a couple different things. And on Mac OS, they have like, I think it's like Carabiner Elements. You can set up something called a hyperkey, which is, it turns your caps lock into Control, Super, Alt, Global, or whatever their extra keys are, and you can just press that one key, and then you'll have a whole new layer for more keybinds, right? Really cool stuff. Scripting clicks. This is, if you get into this, I promise you, you will come out of it a better person. Scripting clicks. So the idea is they have software on Linux. Things like xdotool, wtype. There's a couple others, and the idea is their keyboard and mouse emulation. Right, so if you have a repetitive task that sometimes you got to just click on the same thing, that gets kind of annoying. So what something like xdotool allows you to do is you can use a command to send the mouse pointer to an XY coordinate on the screen and click. So having that set up to a keybind for a task that you're doing repetitively, so you don't have to touch the mouse for that 1 second, is great, right? So that's a thing. Learning the keybinds in your favorite apps. I guess this could be in your first steps, but also in your advanced steps. So every program that you interact with has some sort of keybinds if it's designed properly, right? Obviously, there's stuff out there that doesn't have keybinds because the people who made it are dumb. So yeah, there's that. TUI apps and command line, I already kind of touched over that. Now let's get into like environment situations, right? So my thoughts on tiling versus floating. So tiling is kind of like what I'm using right now, and then floating is kind of like your traditional, think like Windows, Mac OS. These are floating window managers, right? What they have on top of their little operating system. So tiling, automatically place windows dynamically. You got this sort of thing going on. You can have a lot of windows up in there, right? That's kind of cool, I guess. Good for multi-window screens. So I kind of look at workspaces and tags like I just call them screens, just so it makes more sense. I am on one screen right now. Being able to do this, blah, 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 it's great. Tiling, not always good for drag and drop situations. And the reason being is when you open up certain programs, like let me get a. All right, so I got my file manager and like let's say Audacity. So let's say I have a program that's a GUI that has like a lot of busyness going on to it, and I go to drag and drop. I might not be able to reach everything in the drag and drop since it's scrunched up into half the screen, right? So that's a downside to tiling. And then another one I realized recently, and this is going to be very specifically for RuneScape players. So in RuneScape, you can play full screen, right? But when it comes to PvP and other click-intensive movement sort of things, that's not always the great. And traditionally, RuneScape's in a small window because it's made for some old-ass resolution from like 2003, right? Like 720p or something. So it like naturally is a small window. So when you're using tiling, sure you can send it into floating, but then you're doing all this like, wait, can I do it in here? I don't use floating keybind in the tiling normally. But yes, you could send it to floating and then resize it and this and that. But that's just like so much more effort in comparison to something that's floating. But that's like one specific use case. There's probably other things out there that are kind of don't work well together that way in tiling. I know, like, I've come into a few circumstances where it just wasn't good. Uh, When I was running FL Studio on Linux and I wanted to drag and drop with Sononym, nah, it didn't like that. I don't know. I can't really think of too many others, but I'm sure there's ones that people will come across where it doesn't work out. Now, and that jumps into floating, right? With floating, you don't get the automatic window placement, right? Window snapping can be kind of clunky. However, there are things called manual tilers out there too, where you manually tile your windows. So it's not much far off. It's about one click off, or one movement or action off from what tiling is, because tiling is doing it automatically, right? So when it comes to like window snapping and stuff like that, if you're if you can come up with a good scheme in your head for the navigation and movement of that, it can become just as fast and just as convenient as using a tiling window manager. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, doesn't automatically uh tile stuff. And then one thing you need to watch out for with floating, so you have this idea of focus. And what focus is if you have a single screen like this right now, and I have multiple windows open, right? If I go, oh yeah, I forgot, I don't even have this set up. No, don't do this. When you have these multiple ones, let's say I'm on this window and I want to get to this window, right? Uh, on a floating window manager, you might have the new window open, but you don't have the focus, if that makes any sense. So like on here, I'm like super tab to do it because I'm an alt tabber guy, right? But you know, on other setups, I have alt and the arrow keys or HJKL to jump between the focus, right? So this is like a hard subject. So there are extensions in certain things. I'll give a couple examples. So in Cinnamon, which is like the default manager for window manager for Linux Mint, right? Cinnamon, you need to get an extension that the focus goes onto the new window. And other things too, like macOS is the same way. You need to have uh I guess they would call it an extension. I don't know. You need to have that setting turned on for that too. But yeah, that's tiling versus floating. Honestly, floating might be a little bit more work to get your navigation and scheme, but ultimately it's like probably the more fulfilling if you get into cool things, though. I should say this is a caveat. You want to get into cool things like LabWC and OpenBox and, Berry WM. These are very, very cool. There's like a lot of tweaking, a lot of building going on, but at the end of the day, you're gonna have a really lightweight, snappy, functional, keyboard-driven sort of setup. So yeah, there's that. So right now we're gonna go into some software recommendations. I'll kind of explain what some stuff is, and we have and a lot of this stuff I've kind of talked about already and in the past, but we're just gonna go over it briefly. So for your browser extensions for navigation, you got Tridactyl, Vimium. You can also use Qt Browser, which is its own browser thing. They have like Vim, and they have all these different things. Hell, you can even go like super crazy with it, and you can do some suckless tools, and you can get Surf, and then you can build all the functionality that Qt Browser has into Surf, and then just use that, right? So that's a thing. Obviously, app launchers. This is all stuff I've covered. Terminals. These are the terminals that I personally recommend if you want to get into them. I highly, highly recommend Kitty. This is industry staple. It's really good. Cursor Trails are super cool. Alacrity's okay. Ghosty's okay. Westerm, there's other ones. Foot, that's another good one. ST if you want to get into patch and stuff. Yeah, these are your terminal. Like I said before, the terminal is kind of important because, scripting and all this sort of stuff, you need it, right? A text editor, NeoVim, Helix, Nano, we went over that, right? Multiplexers. What a multiplexer is this, right? So I use Tmux, right? So this is my, oh, hold on. We can get out of this. I use Tmux. This is Tmux. So I have this window. Let's say I open this, and I can do like this, and now I have a whole new window, right? And I can do, let's say a LS. Let's say I want to split this into another window. I can go over here. This is what multiplexing is. You know what I mean? We can do all this cool stuff here, and have a bunch of different windows and a bunch of different ways to have all your terminal stuff in one place. That's really what the multiplexers are for. Yeah. That's weird. I just got that error because they're DDoSing the Arch the Arch Linux website. um yeah, so Tmux and Zellage are basically your two options for that. However, like for instance, Kitty, Ghosty, a lot of these terminals have their own kind of multiplexing coming on, but they don't give the the session availability. So like what that kind of is like, let's say I got this Tmux here. You see how I have home 3? So I have a thing TLS. It's like an alias for Tmux LS, and it just shows me the different sessions I have open. So like let's do TA, right? Now I'm in session 0. We'll quit out of this. I'll do TA again, which is Tmux attach. All right, looks like I don't have any. So I can do Tmux, right? We can close this. I'll open this again, and if I do TA, which is Tmux attach, it opens back into that session that I already had open, right? Very cool, very useless. Useless, very useful. Yeah, various TUI apps. We already covered X2 tool, W type. Yeah, window managers. Yeah, I think I've come across all of this good. I'm probably covering up some of the text here. Autism. We need to celebrate this. This is a superpower. It's like that new Predator movie where they come down and they're like looking for the kid with the autism, and they look at him as like the next evolution of man. This is involved in that. These are things that happen inside your brain, you know what I mean? And being able to navigate through your computer and express your ideas as fast as possible is always going to be a great thing. As a piece of advice, treat this like questing in an RPG. When you learn how to play RPGs, you start with one task and then you move on to another and you move on to another, and eventually you have a whole routine of different cool things that you can do with inside the game. Treat your usage of the computer like that. You know what I mean? You're gaining these abilities, right? You're gaining these abilities. You're becoming better at the computer. Anyways, if you guys like this video, please comment, share, subscribe, do all the things. Again, I apologize for being on hiatus, but, I kind of look at it this way. If I'm not, like, enjoying myself when I'm talking about these things, the videos aren't going to come out good, right? They're just not. And, for instance, this little thing I rewrote this 3 times because I couldn't put my thoughts together about it, because there's just so much information. Even with what I've said here, I can go for like another 2 hours about this, because like I can just go into detail with all these things, but it's like, I don't know. Is it necessary? I don't know. This is just a good starting point. This is more like, hey, And then we've also had a couple other things that happen in the world that is like super crazy, and I just kind of been delving into that sort of content. I'm sure you guys know, the Charlie Kirk thing. Rest in peace. It was fucking horrible. I've never, obviously I've watched a lot of people die on the internet, just, being on 4chan and other places. And honestly, I've seen people get, their heads cut off. I've seen people get lit on fire, all sorts of nasty, brutal stuff. And honestly, I think that affected me more than anything else, because it was like historical, you know what I mean? And then obviously all this stuff going on in Nepal. I mean, that's all over and done with. Everybody's safe, everybody's good now. But yeah, so like I kind of like just delved into a lot of that content, and and just stress at work. It just put me in a bad mood where I just didn't want to make videos because I didn't want to be a negative Nancy going through it. You know what I mean? I also burnt the crap out of my fucking hand. That's a grease burn right there. That's some fucking brutal. um, but yeah, so yeah, that's why I was gone. But yeah, I'm back. We're doing stuff again. I got more video planned out, and we'll do a couple streams soon here and whatnot. But yeah, if you like the video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the things. I really appreciate you guys watching. And yeah, I hope you guys have a good day. Peace out.